Hey, push one in the chat if you can hear me. All right, thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 604, Black Pandemic Talk. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Doc in the description, you need the video for you to follow along with. If you want to engage in the discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on. When you click on the link, make sure you raise your hand so that one of us can acknowledge you and advance you to the panel. Just as an FYI, there's a new Zoom update out, so make sure you update your Zoom client to 5.2.0 before joining the panel. All right, we grab the link and we can get started. All right, first item on the docket is from the New York Post. The coronavirus mutation causes outbreaks to spread more quickly, expert. A new coronavirus mutation has become the most dominant strain of the virus and is causing outbreaks to spread more quickly across the world, as an expert said. Professor Nick Lohman of the University of Birmingham, who is part of the COVID-19 Genomics Consortium, told BBC Radio 4's Today program that the mutation known as D614G is forming clusters more quickly in the UK than the original virus from Wuhan. It exists in the spike protein, which is a very important way that the coronavirus can enter the human cells. And we have been noticing in the UK and worldwide that this mutation has been increasing in frequency, Lohman said. This mutation was predicted first by computer modeling to have some impact on the structure of the protein, of that protein and the ability of the virus to bind and enter cells, and then quite recently was shown in laboratory experiments to increase the ineffectivity of cells. Scientists came to the conclusion after analyzing more than 40,000 genomes in the UK, according to Lohman. The new mutation, however, is not believed to cause a greater risk of death or lengthier hospital stays. Lohman called the mutation the most dominant mutation. It's about 75% of cases. The increase in this mutation is a worldwide phenomenon, he added. The original virus out of Wuhan had the D type, but the G type has become much more dominant across the world, including the UK. However, the strain is not expected to impact the process of finding a vaccine for COVID-19, he added. He also attempted to alleviate any concerns that the mutation might signal a deadlier new phase for the coronavirus. It's a small impact, we think, and we're not completely confident about that. But we found by testing what happened in the UK that the viruses that contain the G type of mutation seem to form clusters of cases faster, which ended up being bigger than viruses with the D mutation, the professor said. We didn't see any significant association with the survival and the length of hospital stays with this mutation. We don't think this mutation is important in changing virulence. The effect seems to be on transmittability. Dr. Heidi Z. Zapata, a Yale Medicine infectious disease specialist and immunologist, also said there's not enough conclusive evidence to suggest the virus is becoming more infectious or deadly. Currently, we do not have sufficient evidence to come to any conclusions about the virus becoming more malicious or benign, Zapata told CNET. We simply know that certain variants have become more prominent, such as the D614G strain. However, currently, our evidence about D614G shows that it is not causing different clinical outcomes in humans. So this thing is already mutated into something far beyond what it originally was. Okay. And because of this, you have a lot of people saying, well, this is a pandemic. This is not real. This is fake. It came from China. It came from this. Well, it's already mutated. Okay. You have squirrels in the United States that have similar impactful diseases that could potentially spread too. But a lot of people will deny that this is even the case. Okay. Let me jump to the next item on the docket. This is from CNN.com. The Clorox wipe shortage is expected to last into 2021. Clorox, the world's biggest maker of disinfectant cleaning materials, said consumers will continue to see a shortage of its wipes and other products into 2021 because of overwhelming demand during the pandemic. While all kinds of disinfectant products have been flying off store shelves since March, wipes have been especially in high demand with consumers. Clorox, which dominates the $1 billion disinfectant wipes market with a 45% market share, said it has aggressively ramped up production for its cleaning products, but it still won't be enough. Given the fact that cold and flu sits in the middle of the year, and then we expect the pandemic to be with us for the entirety of the year, it will take the full year to get up to the supply levels that we need to be at. Clorox president and CEO-elect Linda Rendell said Monday in a call with analysts to discuss the company's earnings. Separately, Clorox's outgoing CEO, Ben Odor, told Reuters that Clorox wipes specifically will be in short supply until next year. Frankly, we thought we would be in a better position by now, but demand in Q4 exceeded our expectations, Dora told analysts. We're certainly not at all happy with our service levels for our retail customers on many products. We have a high sense of urgency on this with all hands on deck. Still, the pandemic fueled our run on disinfectant products, boosted overall company sales by 22% in the quarter. So alcohol, isopropyl, 70%, up to 80%, 90%, 91%. You can't find that anywhere. At least I haven't seen any locally. Clorox wipes, I haven't seen any locally. In fact, I think they take them off the shelf, and you got to ask for it by hand. So, I mean, we got to come up with alternative solutions to cleaning products, man. Vinegar and stuff like that. I know some people have their own contraptions that they make up, but you got to come up with some alternatives. When I was on the continent, there was all types of home remedies and stuff that they were coming up with, because they couldn't afford to go out and just buy products and stuff like that. Pandemic had everything sold out. We have DE Raptor on the panel.
Shalom, Mike. Shalom to the chat. But that article you read just now really kind of perked me up a little bit, because if this thing is mutating so quickly, I'm looking at all these people who are making or claiming that they're making. Oh man, there's no way that they can make a vaccine for this thing, because they can't get out ahead of it. I don't see how they're going to get one. And whoever came up with one that claimed that it's going to work, I want to see their evidence, really. And it's true. All the Walmarts I see around here, alcohol, and in some cases, most cases, they have it at the pharmacy. You have to go ask for it.
Yeah. Let me jump to the next item on the docket. All right, this is from Bloomberg. No such thing as a safe age with COVID-19. John Hopkins. Let's check this out.
For vaccines, does it mean that we will eventually get a vaccine, or could the antibodies just not be sustained?
Yeah, well, good morning. We're certainly hopeful with the news out of Oxford. Yet another vaccine that is showing the production of antibodies. This study had over 1,000 participants. 2 doses seem to do better than a single dose in producing antibodies. The investigators report similar to that of people who've recovered from the virus. So that's another good sign. So we now have a couple of vaccine candidates that are showing us similar results. Those results that they do produce antibodies after 1 or 2 doses, and that's a good thing. So it's all promising. But again, they are in healthy volunteers. That's a far leap from preventing coronavirus infection.
Jason, are we better at treating the sick with COVID-19? Is there a better chance of survival now than there was 2 months ago?
So the answer is somewhat it depends. Yes, we know a couple of drug candidates both reduce time in length of stay and symptoms. That's the Remdesivir medication. We know that for oxygenated and mechanically ventilated patients, we have improvements with the drug dexamethasone. So that's another improvement, but those are modest types of improvements. And we've recently seen details about inhaled medications, inhaled interferon, potentially helping to reduce patients. Now that last study, I'm not being more specific because it's not peer reviewed yet. It's also very small sample size, and so the jury is still out on whether or not we can trust those findings in that study for the inhaled interferon medication. But we are seeing small gains in a variety of different therapeutic options, which help to improve overall survival.
Jason, when you look at some of the numbers out there and have we been able to treat, are you expecting a strong second wave as we get onto the colder months? And would this be tied also to people starting to travel again because of summer, but also schools reopening?
Yeah, so I think it's really important for us to realize that in the United States, at least, I'm not convinced epidemiologically that we've ever left the first wave. So do I see even a worsening of this first wave? I think the case is true. You know, in the beginning of the pandemic, we were all having conversations about, oh, the summer will result in decreased numbers of cases, right? And most of us in our fields were saying, well, there's nothing specifically about summer that reduces virus. It's about our behavior. Well, our behaviors haven't really shifted that much. And so if we look at things that put our behavior in greater contact going into the fall, such as schools reopening, such as going back to work, such as reduced social distancing measures like restaurants reopening, all of those are opportunities to continue to spread and increase new cases of the virus. So it's really centered on how we respond behaviorally.
But children, as far as we understand, are actually less affected by COVID-19. Does it mean that they also transmit it less?
So no, you know, and there's continued emerging data that, you know, our age of new cases are shifting into younger people, particularly those adolescents into young adults. And we are seeing some severe cases among that age group. So we can't, I want to make sure everyone recognizes that there's no such thing as a safe age in terms of COVID-19. But further, when we think about putting kids back in schools, you know, we really need to think about, is that our best decision? Of course, there's economic impacts of not doing so. There's parental stress and family stress by not doing so. But schools are not designed to help provide social distancing. They're not designed to help kids who touch everything, including themselves and their face and each other, to prevent doing so. So we really need to think long and hard about best practices that other countries have implemented who have sent their children back to school and done so successfully. But we also really need to be thinking about how parents are engaged and involved in making this decision. Parents really need to understand what their school system is doing.
Yeah, so there it is. There is no safe age with COVID now. Okay. You want to send your kids back to school? You go ahead and do that. You want to open up the market? You go ahead and do that. And the blowback from that is going to have repercussions that we've never seen before. You'll have so many sick kids. Influenza, measles, chickenpox, mumps, you know, common flu, COVID-2. And you want to open up the market to this? I don't know. It just doesn't seem logical. I mean, you have to have a plan in place, and this is not a plan. It's probably much cheaper to buy all these kids new laptops and computers and an internet connection and let them learn remotely. Much cheaper than actually opening it up and letting the bodies drop. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. D-Rap, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, look, we've been fed this thing about our freedom and our rights, and people are so afraid of I don't know, how would I put it? I don't want to put it the wrong way, and then but people are afraid that if they say, you know what, I can't send my kid to school, that what the neighbor is going to say, you know, because I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat or I'm a this or that. And they're not looking at the whole picture. That's the first thing. The second thing is that this internet and the news cycle, there's so much misinformation going around that you really can't tell, that the average person, I would say, and the average person, even though they might have a college degree, don't understand some of this, the way people are talking about this thing. And you don't have any leadership, even like the congressman who went home. They went home Nobody held a town hall meeting and say, look, this is what we know about this thing. If you don't watch the news, even if you watch the news, you're getting half truths and misinformation mixed around with the, and you got to try to pick up that. And most Americans cannot pick this out.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how they're gonna fix this problem, but it takes education. And if you are a parent and you decide that, well, you know what, I'm gonna send my child to school because everybody's going to school, and you don't look into this thing carefully, you are the one at fault.
Yeah, this is you know, there's no safe age. There's not enough. I mean, and he even said that we have not even come up with a plan for reopening schools. We don't have a plan. It's August and we don't have a plan. But it's a pandemic, though. It's a pandemic.
Look, Mike, Florida is supposed to open school. Well, it's supposed to be August. Florida is the first state to open school. We open school like the first week of August, second week of August. But there's no plan. They're just, I mean, they open up the beaches and everything. Then they had to start shutting stuff down because they didn't really, I mean, our governors, well, I don't go in that subject, but they don't have anybody who have enough sense to tell the people the facts. Just come up and say, look, this is what we know, without the political interference, you know, because this thing is affecting the whole country. Everybody in the country is affected. Whether you're staying home or whether you're going out, it's affecting you because it's making you stay at home. And if you're going out, the high possibility that you would get it, even if you go to family, that you're going to get it. So this thing has to be, I mean, there has to be a blanket information from the government. Don't let anybody else give information to people. Special announcements on radio, television, telling people how to go about doing these things, but it's not being done. And that's really, I mean, that's the part that gets me upset.
Yeah, just open it back up. That's what the Hooded Servitor said earlier. Open it back up. The economy's doing just fine. Schools are doing just fine. You just had several experts come on and say, this disease knows no age, it knows no race, it eats everything in its path. And it mutated too. Keep that in mind, it mutated. So you can't, you know, the vaccine that you may have been working on before may not be able to attribute to new mutations that comes down the pipe. But if you leave it to certain people,
doctors that work in this, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if you leave it to certain people, open up the market, open up the economy, open up the schools. What a disaster this will be. It will be worse than Vietnam.
It's already worse than Vietnam, bro.
Oh,
because it took us it took us how many years to make to for all the people who died in Vietnam to die? How many years? This is not even 1 year yet. So we can imagine what was going to happen if this thing go on for another 3 years. You know what I'm saying? We'd be surpassed in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And that's not even I mean, this is, people don't realize the seriousness of this. And they're not taking it seriously because they don't have the leadership. People telling them, look, here is what we know. Absolutely know. And this guy is telling people, this is what we know. But nobody's listening to this. People hardly read. People hardly read. I mean, every night you read about, you come on here, read information from people, 2 and 3 different sectors saying, you know, people come on and articles that you read about, and people come on and say, that's all you guys do is read. Because these people, I mean, you can imagine the ignorance that go on, man. So, you know what I'm saying? This is getting ridiculous, in my opinion. I mean, there are certain sectors of the economy that are absolutely needed to be on the road. I mean, truckers, you know, doctors, nurses, people who run government offices. Those are things that you absolutely need, but you should put policies in place that protect these people. You know, if you're going to go into a government office, you make an appointment. You go in and you sit down. You're separated somehow, and you know, you passing information back and forth. You might have a computer that you go in and put your like you're going to renew your license. You gotta put down bring in some kind of paper. There should be a printer there, a copier that you put your paper on top of that thing, and your the person you're talking to should be able to see the information from it. She shouldn't have to touch that paper at all. We have the technology to do that. But you know, when you go into office, you don't see that. So
yeah,
you know, they have to get to that stage.
No, it's kind of hard to get people to understand it, man. I mean, because most people who are black, if you can't eat, fight, or fuck it, they're not really interested in the fucking answer to it. They don't care. Like, you know, I'm telling people consistently that this stuff is a problem. They don't care. I go to rural America. They're in like what, Lima, Ohio, talking about we're just gonna open back up the schools like ain't nothing wrong. I'm like, dude, because you ain't had a singular case doesn't mean you're completely safe. It's like, and it's like you really can't tell these people anything. I say that the government need to start charging all new people who have COVID. They need to start charging.
No, I think we should do it just like Dubai does. If you want to go outside, you need to log into the government's website if you're a non-essential worker and give us your license plate number, give us the Uber receipt or the order for the or Uber or Lyft, and tell us where you're going. And if we find out you go into a block party and you out there twerking it up, spitting game out there, we're gonna hold you. We're gonna hold you accountable. You're not getting your stimulus check. You're not getting your W-2 returns.
Nah, man.
Yep, I saw that, Mike. And they give you, they say, you go to the supermarket to shop, you got 1 hour to shop.
Yep.
And we tracking you, your phone.
Yep.
When you go out, we know we leave home. When you come back in, we know you leave home, you back home. And that's the way it's supposed to be.
They do, like, dude, like, they don't care about the severity of the shit. They think that most people who have these problems are people who you shouldn't respect in the first place. And they're like, well, I'm just gonna go on about my daily life. I'm like, if this shit get incubated in your system for that period of time, you can't, going about your normal life is gonna put a lot of people in danger. Like, where was it? I think it was Tennessee or South Carolina. There was a guy who said, I'm not gonna wear a mask so other people can feel safe. I'm like, who the fuck?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he cut a hole in his mask and walk around with it. It is kind of hilarious. But the thing is, I agree with your point about municipal wireless and laptops. So something that's
cheap.
That's something that's been worked on here for a few years now. Basically, all the libraries and public schools have antennas on their buildings to try to connect everyone in the neighborhoods with the internet.
They should, man. I mean, there is absolutely no reason why municipalities don't have their own Wi-Fi that we could pay like what, an extra 2 or 3 cents or maybe 1% or even 0.1% sales tax for, and we have municipal wireless all over that's worth it. I would pay that in a heartbeat.
It costs something like $70 million to roll out something like that. It's 180 million to roll out fiber in the streets and stuff like that. The alternative is you can run it over telephone poles. I think Zero worked on a project maybe about a couple years ago, running internet over power lines. So it can be done. It's just a matter of political willpower to actually do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think where we are at now that singular piece of real estate can be used for something else.
Mhm.
Maybe hospitals in neighborhoods, perhaps.
Mhm.
And they already got the classrooms; those can be regular rooms, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's just much safer. It's much safer for everybody. Times like this is supposed to challenge people
Mhm.
to do something different. Like a time like this, this is how new startups come up. Like me, I'm about to get into the cleaning field, hardcore, because I know people ain't equipped to do the stuff that needs to be done, especially for these big corporations. A lot of these people in these small areas, like they don't know what they're doing. It's like, dude, listen, how much did you say? 70 million? I'm like, dude, we waste 70 million on who knows what. You could pay what, a 0.0% sales tax over 10 years and have it paid off. Everybody have municipal wireless in a certain area. So that
Well,
way the people who don't want to provide services don't.
yeah, well, they have 5G bands. So the government has multiple 5G bands that they auction off, that are readily available, if you so need it. It's called white spaces, and so you can buy 25 miles of 4G 5G bands, if you so needed to. It'll probably cost you a couple $1,000,000 just to get the bands in the license, but you just got to provide the infrastructure. So all of this can't be done like you said. It's just a matter of cost. I worked on a wireless project, community wireless project, a couple of years ago, probably like 2017, 2016. Very, very challenging project, even just from a planning standpoint. So it can be done, with about a dozen people, if you have the right people in the room. It's just a matter of money.
I mean, because if we can, like if I could have Verizon 4G hotspot all over the country, providing internet via wireless shouldn't be that big of a deal. It just shouldn't.
Yeah, it shouldn't. But that's the point of net neutrality, right? A lot of people haven't really looked at net neutrality, but that's what's in the talks, that to break up the big
Internet service price, yeah,
and put it in and make it publicly a public institution where there's democracy and the people on the ground have a say in what goes on in terms of the utility itself. And a lot of the private companies, are kind of screw face about it, but that's the nature. All right, let me jump to this next item on the docket from Wired.com. What can ants and bees teach us about containing disease? Social insects cooperate to curb the spread of pathogens. Maybe their systems of behavior can help human societies battling pandemics of our own. Oh, this is going to be a doozy. Given that she infects ant colonies with deadly pathogens and then studies how they respond, one might say that Natalie Stroy, a senior lecturer in the School of Biological Sciences at the University of Bristol in UK, specializes in miniature pandemics. The tables turned on her, however, in March. COVID-19 swept through Britain, and Stroy was shut out of her epidemiology lab. The high-performance computers she uses to track the ant behavior sat idle, and only a lab technician deemed an essential worker was permitted to tend to the lab's hundreds of black garden ant colonies, each housed in its own plastic tub. With government, with governments across the world now encouraging people to maintain space between one another to prevent the spread of the virus, Stroy drew parallels with her insect subjects. The current guidance on social distancing rang familiar, Stroy said, because I've been seeing it among the ants. Such insights are at the heart of the growing field of insect research that some ant scientists say could help humans imagine a more pandemic resilient society. As with humans, fending off disease can be a tall order for social insects, a category that includes termites, ants, and many species of bees and wasps. Insect workers swap fluids and share close quarters. In most species, there is heavy traffic into and out of the nest. Some ant colonies are as populous as New York City. The insects are living in a very confined environments where there's a lot of microbial load, said Rebecca Rosingas, a behavioral ecologist who studies social insect behavior at Northeastern University in Boston. Many of those microbes, she added, are pathogens that could sweep through the colony like a plague. That really happens. Social insects researchers say in vast colonies such as such species are somehow able to limit the spread of contagions. Over the past 3 decades, researchers have begun to explore just how that might occur, mapping the myriad ways that colonies avoid succumbing to disease. Some of those methods can seem alien. Others include simple immunization-like behavior and forms of insect social distancing can seem eerily familiar. Put together, they form a kind of parallel epidemiology that might provide insights for human societies battling pathogens of their own, even if so far human epidemiologists don't pay much attention to the field. Still, those insights are what Rosingas and other researchers are now exploring. How is it possible, Rosingas asks, that an individual that gets exposed to a fungus or a bacteria or a virus or whatever pathogen there is comes back to the colony and does not infect everyone in the colony? While social insects have been the subject of intense scientific scrutiny for more than a century, the threat of pathogens and other parasites, researchers say, was long overlooked. The mainstream social insect research has ignored parasites for a very long time, said Paul Schmid-Hempel, an experimental ecologist at the Swiss Public Research University, ETH Zurich. Biologist E.O. Wilson's classic 1971 survey of the field, the insect societies does not even list words disease, pathogen, bacteria, or virus in its index. As postdoctoral research at Oxford in the 1980s, Schmid-Hempel realized that the bees in study were constantly infested with parasites. He began to formulate questions that would help launch a small field. What if pathogens were not an incidental nuisance to colonies, but a profound threat that shaped a very evolution of their societies? To what extent were things like ant colonies and beehives actually tiny epidemic states? Observers of social insects have long known that the animals keep their homes meticulously clean. Workers deposit waste and dead bodies outside the nest. Social insects groom each other and often themselves frequently. But recent research has documented other adaptations that also fight infection. Some ants, for example, harvest antimicrobial tree resins and spread them around their nest, a process researchers have described as collective medication. Social insect species also secrete a pharmacopoeia of microbe-killing compounds, which they apply to their bodies and surfaces. Imagine that, you know, the ants, the insects are actually socialists in hindsight.
Yeah, and more organized than actual humans, adults.
Yeah, grooming too seems to have unexpected benefits. As some ants clean each other, they transfer small amounts of pathogens to their nestmates. Those many exposures, biologist Sylvia Kremer writes in a recent paper, cause non-lethal low-level infections that trigger a protective immunization. She compares the process to virilation, a once common method for immunizing humans against smallpox by exposing them to a small amount of fluid or dried scab material from a sick person. Rosinga's research has documented similar social immunization behavior among dampwood termites. She and colleagues have also found evidence that when some members of a black carpenter ant colony encounter pathogenic bacteria, they are able to develop an immune response and share it with their nestmates, making the entire colony more resistant. The ants who have been exposed appear to be passing along immune system compounds mouth to mouth ahead of the infection, readying their nestmates' bodies for the possibility of exposure. Rosingas compares this adoption to a world in which a human could French kiss someone who has received a vaccine and then gain the benefits of that vaccine indirectly. These kinds of findings challenge assumptions that social living, by creating right conditions for diseases to spread, is automatically a risk to individuals. Both the risk and the mitigation of risk come from sociality itself. Says Nina Pfefferman, a professor of ecology and evolutionary biology at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, who studies disease transmission. Other individuals may get us sick, but they can also offer the care, food, and knowledge that saves our lives. Everything is all rolled into this very complicated set of constraints and goals, Pfefferman said. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but it's actually pretty good. Yeah, so ants and other insects are actually socialists in hindsight. Not that they're not capitalists, but they still believe in or still practice methods that actually keep the colonies going. So they get rid of all of the the Ray Pookies and actually spread more of the good stuff.
Oh my God! I mean, this can cut so many ways. But if Xanatos Clutch is listening, oh my God! Rise of the planet of the community. If only they had to do was just share the same personnel in one specific environment, they're going to be the ones who outlive everybody. Wow, that's what it seems like. According to that environment. And dude, something can be learned about this, man. It's like, to protect people is such a long process, but to destroy things is such a short process. I mean, it's just that something like this pretty much tells you why everybody can't really deserve protection, man, because a lot of these people just want to sit here and do their own thing no matter what. And they're like, well, I got the freedom to put everybody at risk, so there's no consequences for me doing so. And that's kind of like where we're at. Like, wow. It's crazy that insects got this stuff figured out, right? But human beings don't have it figured out. Insane.
Yeah, let me jump to the next item on. Let me advance this person, Jay. Advance him to the panel. All right, next item on the docket is from Bloomberg. GSK expects vaccine approval in first half of 2021. What does this have to say?
CEO of XPO Logistics that said you're looking more at a 9-month time frame to sort of get the vaccine in my arm. What are you seeing on your side?
Yeah, Alex, good to talk to you. Yeah, I think everybody wants to know about the timeline. It is going to take a number of months to get there. For the GSK Sanofi vaccine in particular, we're going into critical clinical trials starting in September, and we'll start our final clinical trials, assuming that those first ones go positive at the end of the year. We're expecting approval of this vaccine in the first half of 2021, so still a number of months. There is a chance that some doses earlier could be available for emergency use, but we're expecting approval in that first half.
Why would you need it for emergency
How
use?
does the money that the US pledged to your efforts today get spent, Roger?
Well, in terms of the 2.1 billion that has been issued for funding today, the split is roughly just over half of it is for research and development. So clinical trials are very expensive, tens of thousands of people being tested. So we're spending that amount in terms of clinical trial investment, and the rest is actually manufacturing scale-up. What's critical in this whole process is delivering a vaccine that is obviously safe and effective, but being able to make it at scale. And investing in that manufacturing capacity, buying your raw materials in advance, because it takes months to manufacture. So we're going to start making it risk, assuming the trials are successful. So the minute that we get a go, we have products sitting in vials and ready to be administered.
How much, let me ask you this way. Are you looking to make a profit on this?
In terms of how GSK is thinking about this, we want to make sure that we price it really fairly. And we also want to make sure that this is a global vaccine as well. So what we have said is that we're going to substantially discount our contribution in terms of the partnership. We're making what's called the adjuvant in this vaccine, and we're going to significantly discount it. And then also, if for any profit that we make in the short term, we're going to reinvest that in a number of things. We're going to invest it in research into the coronavirus for the future. Secondly, invest in pandemic preparedness capabilities. So if this doesn't happen again, or if it does happen again, we can go even faster. And thirdly, donation doses, because we believe that we'll have to donate for the developing world.
Where does the manufacturing go? Where does this stuff get produced, Roger?
So the adjuvant element that GSK's manufacturing is actually a proven component of a vaccine. So we have a supply chain in existence. It does not operate at the billion dose scale that we need next year. So that's why we're building it up. But our particular supply chain is in the US, it's in Canada, and it's in Europe. So we've got good global coverage in terms of the existing capability. And those sites, those manufacturing sites, will be investing to build that capability and capacity up as quickly as we can.
Who gets it first?
In terms of how we want to allocate, we believe that it's got to be globally accessible in terms of our overall approach. That we know, though, that there has to be investment at risk. So this is why investment from the likes of the US and the UK is critical, so that we are investing and sharing the risk of the manufacturer. Who gets it first in terms of timing? I think that's going to play out, and a lot of that will depend on the regulatory environment in each of those countries. Who approves it first and then allows it to be used? So I think that's going to play out over time.
So there you have it, ETA of 2021. So for some people who think that we'll have it in a few weeks, not necessarily.
Dude, that's if everything goes right. There's so much wrong with that interview. Like, I don't get why these people come out here and that was pretty much a ploy to get more NIH funding.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that's there for. I'm the CEO of the company. I'm asking for NIH funding because we're so close to a cure. Just give us free money, and we'll promise that you get first dibs on the actual product once it's done. Like, dude, that's not how capitalism works. That's not even how pharmaceutical lobby works.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to hold this stuff hostage, and as soon as it's done, the stock is going to go crazy. The stories are going to change. And this is where you actually put some ramifications on the funding for this. There's never been any ramifications on the NIH funding.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that happens.
Go ahead.
The only thing that happens, Mike, is they do the research and they sell it to somebody else, or they sell it for exorbitant prices, knowing that they got all the funding from the actual government. It's just a racket within itself. It's ridiculous.
We got Dr. Phoenix on the panel.
What's going on?
Nothing much. What's going on?
Not much. Good evening. Yeah, so I'm kind of of two minds about this because one, I think MOT is right. I mean, that is assuming everything aligns properly. The clinical trials work out fine. There's no issues with supply chain because right now, one of the major problems that is popping up now with vaccines is that the vials, the glass vials that vaccines are stored in, they're in short supply. Actually, in very short supply. They've been like that for a while, and so right now the government has contracted out with Corning. Anyone's familiar with Corning? They make all the glass that goes on your cell phones and all of that. But they contracted out with them to actually start producing these glass vials up to, I think it was about 400 million vials by the end of the year, because they're looking to already have at least, well, they won't, ideally would like to have 400 vials for 400 doses of this vaccine. But then two, the other part of that is that no one isn't sure how long this vaccine will be effective.
Boom.
That is the problem. But right now, best case scenario, if you're looking at some of the studies that are out, some of the studies show that, most people immunity from COVID-19, those who've gotten it, developed the antibodies, you drop off in about 3 to 4 months, somewhere in that time frame. And so the problem is
Dr. Phoenix, I heard it was about 6 months. That this may give you about 6 months. Is what I've been hearing.
It depends. It depends on who you ask. I mean, no one's not sure, because you have that T cell immunity, and then you have the regular immunity that we get, but you need the T cell immunity because that's responsible for sort of like the memory, if you will.
Yep.
And so the problem is that those T cells drop off in a very short period of time, as well as the other part of your immune system. And so the problem is that everyone for sure, they're for sure that you're gonna need more than one dose. So even though we may quote get this first vaccination, this first wave of vaccinations out, finding another vaccination is, I don't know. That's going to be a taller order. It's going to be a tall order, but more importantly, if you ask me, this is here to stay. This is going to be one of these things where we're going to be getting seasonal vaccinations. If you ask me, that's kind of where it's headed.
Yeah, I actually think you're right about that. And just also the immunogenic nature, as we all know, of this disease and how it can change and so many, quickly. You want to at least try to be able to stop a lot of it now, so it doesn't have a chance to mutate and move into other areas where you need another vaccine and all this other kind of crap for it. So.
But what about the freedom lovers, the constitutional people who open up their masks, open up the economy, open up the schools, impinging on their freedoms?
These guys are crazy. See, to me, I would just put the state of emergency in here, and I would bring in, literally damn near the federal troops to come through here, set up the centers for vaccine. I mean, not for vaccines, but for testing. Literally get people tested in the next 60 to 80 days. That's how it had this bad boy moving like that. I know somebody would be like, well, you can't do that because fuck the Supreme Court under presidential emergencies, national states of emergencies. Ain't nothing can fuck with the president. He's clothed in immense power. He can do what he wants until the Congress can sit down and determine whether or not his actions are right, and that also includes the War Powers Act. So
certain laws you can write in there.
Oh, I just want to say this, man. Any constitution. Well, the Supreme Court. Fuck the Supreme Court. They can't do shit. They got to sit there with their fingers in their butts, sitting there. Well, the president said this. This is an order. Can't do a damn thing. You bring you federally mandate that you got to get tested. That'll put an end to all of this shit. Okay, president can do that. He can do it. So especially when it comes to a state of emergency, in the country to our national safety, he can do it. So that's what he should be doing right now to end this shit. And then we could trace everyone. We can have everybody tested. We would know exactly who is infected, who isn't, and then we can begin to really start to get around to some level, some at least cogent level of some kind of recovery here once we know where everyone stands. And that's what this country has got to do. Till we do that, we're screwed. You know, a vaccine is not even going to help because a lot of people are not even going to go in with a vaccine. So there's still going to be people getting jammed up. So I don't know how that, you know, that will work, of course. But will it stop, you know, the spread of this thing, the way we need it? We don't know, you know. We have to find out who is and who isn't. That's the key here. That's the key. That was always the key. We blew it in the first 90 days. And we're still walking around. Come on, open up with people not untested. Like you're saying, Mike, the free love people and all that. It's madness. This is craziness.
Well,
no time for this.
Well, yeah, the hood conservatives always talk about, you know, preserving life. You know, does it start at conception or does it start at birth? You know, but then when it comes to everyone else during the pandemic, just open up the economy. Who cares? Let the bodies drop.
Things would be fine.
Yeah.
Let the bodies hit the floor. Yeah, okay, all right.
From the window to the wall. That's what these guys said.
Shit.
Well, I mean, again, I think, you know, just furthermore, just adding to this, you know, you're looking at a scenario where people most likely are going to need multiple vaccinations to retain immunity. But also, too, I mean, problem is that you're going to have to sell this to people. I mean, if you have more than half the population in this country that are just not even complying with wearing masks, you're sure as hell gonna have problems getting people to line up to get vaccinations and multiple vaccinations.
Well, you know, you're dead on it right there, Dr. Phoenix. You're hitting it right in the head, Doc. But yeah, and the key is look at the information that has come down. You got people like Alex Jones and guys like this getting on the medium saying that these are hoaxes and all kind of craziness. You have all manners of myriad miscreants and scurrilous succolades out here talking crazy. And then you have all these other people who are coming up underneath them and buying into this stuff and saying this crap. And then what does that yield? I keep saying it yields to people taking their masks off and walking around. You know, it was just like be during the, you know, I found it kind of interesting when it was during the AIDS crisis, you know, and people were saying, "Oh, AIDS, this." I didn't hear a lot of people saying, "Well, AIDS is a hoax" and all that. You can walk around and go ahead and you know, bop this toddy without, without some kind of coverage on or whatever. You know, people that folks are finding all kind of ways to slip that Jimmy on. So, you know, and the information that came down from there was very, very, very accurate. People were dying. It was terrifying. People didn't want to go out like that. So here we have a disease that's somewhat close to AIDS, that's somewhat like it. And, you know, we have all this craziness. But yet, when you go to other countries like Germany and France and, you know, South Korea and all that, where they've had wonderful responses and all of the agencies were on the same page with respect to information and so forth, you don't hear any of that. They're not talking any of that craziness. But here we are, over 160,000 deaths, you know, and people are talking, you know, that this is some kind of, you know, you got mannequins in beds and all this kind of craziness. I mean, I mean, that's a big part of the problem is the information.
Coincidentally, the hood conservatives don't like to wear masks and they don't like to wear condoms. There you go.
Apparently they don't.
Well, here's the fundamental problem, though. I mean, again, you know, we're in a scenario where you basically, you know, I've heard this. I've heard of coronavirus. The current pandemic is described as a wildfire, which I will actually agree with that. And the problem is in this country, look, we're talking about a country that is leading the world in total COVID-19 cases. More than 4 million cases of coronavirus in this country alone.
And growing.
Yeah. You know, we're at a point now where we're seeing numbers akin to what it was back in April a few months ago. Sure. And right now, you know, you still cannot get people to be compliant with just wearing masks in public. And unfortunately, the only way you're going to get that to happen is it needs to be a law. It needs to be a mandate.
I'm telling you, we
That's
have
the
to
only way
have
we're gonna get
presidential.
compliance. And
You're right. You're right.
it has to be backed up by fines. You have to start fining people because that's and I'll give you an example. I was in a furniture store maybe about a month ago. Walk in the store wearing a mask. Damn old ass white woman come in there, not wearing a mask. Woman say something to her. She starts going on some damn tirade about why she got to wear a mask. And you're looking like this old ass heifer. You gonna be the first motherfucker dying from this. And unfortunately, this is kind of what it is. And the folks that I kind of see that's going the hardest at not wearing it are the folks that are most at risk for it. And certainly most at risk for complications and life-threatening complications. Even when we go to the whole issue around just misinformation, I mean, in this space on the internet, on YouTube, there's so much misinformation. Negroes talking about all kinds of crap like black seed oil and shit like that. And no nigga can't tell you how this stuff even works. They don't even tell you how you can fight a virus. Most people can't even explain to you how a virus even
they can't even spell it. They can't spell the word. They can't spell it.
To take something that they themselves don't even know how it works or can't even prove that it works. They just heard somebody's mother's brother's cousin say XYZ about something. And unfortunately, brother, this is what we're up against. We're up against the fact that you're just up against people who are just going to be classical idiots and then classical cynicists. But then at the same time, everything is about some grand conspiracy. Some aliens came down like, no one never. Do you really think the powers that be? You really think they want people not spending money? This is America. This is the consumer capital of the goddamn world. Why do they want you not spending money? I mean, some of the stuff that I've heard, man, some of the stuff that I've had people tell me, and I'm just sitting here looking at these folks and talking with them, and like these folks are some of the highest risk groups out here, and I'm listening to them, but then I have to listen to them tell me, like, now I don't really wear masks, or no, if they do get a vaccine, I don't trust vaccines. Then what the hell do you want?
Hey, did you ever ask him about Herman Cain? You ever tell him, hey, what happened to Herman Cain?
We talked about that earlier.
Look, man,
I'm saying now, you walk around, you mentioned that to them at least?
I mean, look, not to speak ill of the dead, again, but here's the problem with Herman Cain. You kind of reap what you sow, bro. I mean, if you're sitting around here, running around here with the orange man and talking all this crazy crap with him and conspiracy theories and shit like that, I mean, and then ironically, you most likely got the COVID virus from attending his event, and you're dead like a month later.
Well, 9 days later, his ass is in the hospital. His ass is in the hospital, breathing sand, and then he went straight to the resurrection after that. So, so we know it hit him. We definitely know it hit him. And folks out here walking around talking crazy. I'm saying all this talk that they're doing leads to people taking their masks off and not wearing masks and promoting sickness, literally. I would call this a national emergency. I would call this a national emergency like we at war, and I would literally call out the feds on this. President can do it. And the only ones that can stop him is Congress. Congress can stop him after about 90 days, or I think I've said 6 months. It's either one of those periods. But Congress have to vote on it. It would be a congressional vote. I think it was El Ghost who came out and said something like, well, I agree or I disagree with you, but it's the federal. No, you are wrong. Your information is bad. Let's not talk bad information. Let's get what the correct information is. Supreme Court has no precedence over the executive branch of the office during national emergency. The judicial branch has no priority over that. The executive branch is running. So we just want to say that's what we have to do, Mike. I just want to make sure we're clean on that, and let's see. And I believe this is what needs to be done. Quite frankly, that's a solution. That's an immediate solution to our problem right now. That's what I think we have to do. If we don't do that, we're never going to get our hands around this. All right,
let's go to the next item on the docket from Wired.com. Anthony Fauci explains why the U.S. still hasn't beaten COVID. The director of NIAID, talks about vaccine, school reopenings, hostility towards science by the conservatives, and the lessons where we'll learn.
I don't even know if we can blame the conservatives on that one, brother. That has Black society as a whole, because you wouldn't believe some of the dumb crap I've heard. So
Dr. Fauci's new normal is less normal.
No, the hood servers are stupid as fuck.
What? You okay over there?
Who, me? Yeah, I said the hood servers are. They are dumb as fuck, but they're dumber ones out here. There are people who are even dumber out here than them.
Can I read now?
Go ahead. Yeah, you can. Go ahead, man.
Dr. Anthony Fauci's new normal is less normal than anyone's during this year of the coronavirus. As the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and perhaps the most widely trusted voice on the White House coronavirus task force, he has been revered and rivaled sometimes by his own boss, President Donald Trump, the sixth president he has served under. Just in the past 7 days, he threw out the first pitch of the baseball season and was featured on Topps baseball card, a vaccine that his lab helped develop into a phase 3 trial, the last stage of human clinical testing, and Trump attacked him again, retweeting a charge that the meticulously honest Fauci serially misled the American public. Just another week for the scientist who has been fighting outbreaks since leading the government response on HIV/AIDS in the 1980s, and who now faces the biggest challenge in fighting both the worst pandemic of our lifetime and dealing with a president who doesn't seem to have a coherent plan for fighting the virus. On Tuesday evening, Fauci found time to speak to Wired about why the U.S. has done so poorly in combating COVID-19, whether schools should open, and why no amount of abuse from Trump will make him leave his post. The interview has been edited for clarity and length. Stephen Levy, first, congratulations for appearing on the best-selling baseball card in history. Anthony Fauci, talk about living in a crazy world. If you had asked me 40 years ago when I was a kid if I would ever be in a situation where I would be on baseball cards, I would look at you like you're crazy. I'll bet there are a lot of things happening this year that would have drawn the same reaction from you 40 years ago. You're absolutely right. Major League Baseball prepared for months to start playing and hit a crisis 5 days in. What lessons can we take from that? Let me expand this out. I think that probably the biggest lesson is that even though we are 5.5 to 6 months into this outbreak in the United States, we continue to learn. It's a moving target. I think in good faith, the baseball industry, namely the management, the players, and everyone involved, try their best to see if they could open and continue an abbreviated season with protocols that would safeguard the welfare of the players and the personnel involved. And I think they are doing that. But obviously, to see 12 people on one team getting infected is more than a bit disconcerting. I think the number is now 18. Hopefully, they'll be able to maintain the season without any more unfortunate situations. But you never know. You'll just have to wait and see what happens. If baseball can't go on, what about schools? It's a much more complicated situation with the schools, and I can't give you a yes or a no answer. As a broad principle, we should try our best as we possibly can get the kids to return to school because of the negative unintended consequences of keeping the kids out of the school, like the psychological health of the children, the nutrition of the kids who get breakfast or lunch at school, to working parents who may not be able to adjust their schedules. So the default position is to try. However, while you do that, the one thing that you have to underscore, and that's the big however, is that the paramount among this has to be the safety and welfare of the children, of the teachers, and secondarily of the families of the children. So there has to be a degree of flexibility. There are going to be counties and towns and cities and maybe states with a reasonably low level of infection. So that wouldn't assume that they be any risk of the kids getting infected at school. There's going to be other areas of the country with a modest degree of infection where you might have to modify schedules, have teachers wear masks, more physical separation of desks, and then there may be some areas where the degree of infection is so high, as we're seeing now in certain parts in the country, that you might want to think twice before you make that decision. So what I'm saying is maintain the principle to try as best as you can to open the schools, but make sure you instill in that a degree of flexibility. Why do you think the US has done so poorly in suppressing the pandemic compared with the other rich countries? It isn't just one single factor. Let me give you one or two that I think are important. First of all, other countries, certainly Asian countries, and certainly the European Union, when they so-called locked down, shut down, shelter in place, whatever you want to call it, they did it to about 95% of their countries. So they did it in full force. Some countries got hit badly, but once they locked down and turned things around, they came down to a very low baseline, down to tens or hundreds of new cases per a day, not thousands. They came down and they stayed down. Now in the United States, when we shut down, even though it was a stress and a strain for a lot of people, we only did it to the tune of about 50% of the country shutting down. Our curve goes up and starts to come down, but when we never came down to a reasonable baseline, we came down to about 20,000 new infections per day. And we stayed at that level for several weeks in a row. Then we started to open up, getting America back to normal, and started to see the cases go from 20,000 a day to 30,000 to 40,000. We even hit that one point last week of 70,000 new cases a day. So when you're starting off with a baseline that already is very high, and then you try to open up your country, you try to open your country, and instead of listening carefully and adhering to the guidelines, some states, and I'm not going to name them, skipped over some of the checkpoints. They didn't adhere to the guidelines, which essentially suggested a very measured, prudent way of opening step by step. In other states, the governors and mayors did it right. But in some, all you needed to do was take a look at some of the films. You see people congregating in crowds at bars with no mask on. We didn't shut down fully. The baseline never came down to a real low level. And when we started to open up, we didn't open up uniformly in a very strict way. Some people have suggested that Americans can't work together to stop a pandemic because they are too selfish. Do you buy that? I don't want to be pejorative in blaming Americans. I don't think they are deliberately doing it. I don't think they fully realize, and here's why I say this. The infections taking place now in the last few weeks are much more disproportionately among young people. In fact, the average age of the people that have gotten infected is about a decade or a decade and a half younger than what we saw in the earlier months of the outbreak. A substantial proportion of the people who get infected, 20 to 45%, don't have any symptoms at all. Many of those are very young people, millennials, the people who are out there at the bars. So they look around and say, the chance of me this is spelled wrong. The chance of me getting sick from the virus is much, much, much lower than an elderly person or than somebody with an underlying condition. So I'm just going to do what I want. If I get infected, I'll take my chances. The only thing about that inadvertent and maybe innocent misjudgment is that we're starting to see that more and more young people do have serious outcomes from infection. But what they don't realize is that even if they don't get any symptoms at all, by being careless and allowing themselves to get infected, they are becoming a part of the propagation of the outbreak. They are putting other people in danger by themselves getting infected. That's the message we have to get across. You have to have some social responsibility. Oh, I thought conservatives always talked about self-responsibility, personal responsibility. Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
Like, tell you about the first.
Isn't that what they talk about? Personal responsibility.
That's what I hear. Personal, they're not personally responsible. Well, I take personal responsibility for myself. That's what you.
Yeah. So there it is. Anthony Fauci, the 45's main man. I mean, what more can you say? I mean, he's laying it all out. There's some states that did it right and some states that didn't. He's just not going to name the ones who didn't do it right. You got people who were on here 2 hours ago saying, hey, open up the economy, open up the schools, let the bodies drop. Okay? Let them drop.
I told to say, hanging out, my grandson, don't send him to school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let the bodies drop. The hood conservative says this. He's in his truck. The hood conservative drives their 18-wheelers or their hot shots or whatever it is they drive. They're driving around. They said the economy looks just fine. People are walking around just fine. And yet we read an article from the UK that says, hey, there's a new mutation out.
Well, that's conservative talking, man. They're not too concerned with the facts. I mean, they are actually pushing a narrative. So so you got to understand that, that they're not pushing facts, they're pushing a narrative. Hey, it's a dangerous one because people who are not watching out what's going on, there's a lot of danger, people still dying. So I don't know why we want to play around with this. And remember, COVID is the economy. That's what people don't understand. COVID is the economy. That's why we are where we are.
Yeah, personal responsibility. Wash your hands. Hide your wife, hide your kids. Personal responsibility. What happened? What happened? I mean, wear a mask. Personal responsibility. Oh, I don't believe in masks. I don't believe in that. I do believe in condoms though. I do believe in latex. Right? It's unbelievable. You won't put something over your face, but you'll put something over your Johnson. There's something wrong with this picture.
That's because that's what these guys are thinking.
Yeah, what personal responsibility? What about abstaining? What about abstaining, man? Abstinence. What? Oh, well, what? Hamina. What about abstinence? What happened?
I got. They got it right though with the conservatives. They'll cover their Johnson, but they leave their mouths uncovered. Yeah. That's about right with these guys.
Oh man, a whole heartbeat, man.
You can't. I swear for God, you can't make this shit up. Anyway. Yeah.
Let me jump to the next item on the docket from Fast Company. What we know so far about long haul COVID, the next chapter in our pandemic nightmare. Oh, this is easy. In a new chapter for our collective COVID-19 nightmare, more and more reports are emerging of long-haul COVID-19, a deliberating and ongoing set of symptoms that persist for weeks or months in the aftermath of the disease, which is minimally understood by scientists. Here's what we know so far. Names. It is referred to as post-COVID syndrome or long-haul COVID, and sufferers often call themselves long haulers. Symptoms. Fatigue is a big one, along with ongoing waves of ailments, including fever, dizziness, diarrhea, tingling, brain fog, memory problems, mood swings, shortness of breath, loss of smell and taste, and other neurological symptoms that continue for months. For most, initial COVID-19 symptoms pass, leading them to believe that they are out of the woods, and then symptoms return. Who gets it? Previously healthy 20 to 50 somethings who experience relatively mild to moderate initial COVID-19 illness and thus do not formally get tested for the disease, which makes trying their subsequent illness to COVID-19 difficult. Women may suffer more often. How bad is it? Bad. People are stuck in bed and they are not able to go to work or look after their kids. Timothy Nicholson, a neuro psychiatrist at King's College of London, told Financial Times he suffered long-haul COVID himself. What patients say, before this, I was a fit, healthy 32-year-old, one sufferer told the Atlantic. Now I've been reduced to not being able to stand up in the shower and without feeling fatigued. I tried going to the supermarket and I'm in bed for days afterwards. It's like nothing I've ever experienced before. What experts say. The key is to take these patients seriously. Igor Karlanek, chief of neuroinfectious disease and global neurology at Northwestern Medicine, told the Wall Street Journal. They need to have a thorough investigation by neurologists to try to determine how best to manage them and how to treat them. Where can I talk about it? Online support groups are a good place to start. Do not look to the conservatives support groups. There will be none. What's next? Both SARS and Ebola have associated post-viral syndromes. Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, is encouraging scientists to track and study the syndrome. So the symptoms include diarrhea. Now, earlier we had a live stream, and you would have thought one of the hood conservatives had diarrhea on the panel. Based on his responses, there's a lot of diarrhea coming from him. I mean, I'm just saying. Oh man.
Oh my Mike, chill, baby. Fucking Mike. Anyway. Oh my gosh, Lord have mercy. Oh.
Let me jump to the next item on the docket, man. We can finish this up real quick. All right, this is from CNBC.com. Novavax's coronavirus vaccine generates promising immune response in early trial, data shows. Novavax announced Tuesday that its potential vaccine to prevent COVID-19 generated a promising immune response in an early stage clinical trial, but the biotech company's stock fell briefly on concerns about its safety. The phase 1 trial included 131 healthy participants between the ages of 18 and 59 at 2 sites in Australia. Novavax said 106 participants received one of 4 dose levels of the potential vaccine named MVX-CoV 2373. With or without an adjuvant, which is an ingredient designed to enhance the immune response. The remaining 25 patients received a placebo. The participants received 2 doses of potential vaccine via intramuscular injection, approximately 21 days apart, the company said. The vaccine produced neutralizing antibodies, which researchers believe are necessary to build immunity to the virus and killer T cells. The company said. Additionally, the neutralizing antibodies were higher than those seen in the people who have recovered from COVID-19, Novavax said. The immune response was also stronger for those who had the adjuvant, the company said. Novavax said the vaccine was well tolerated with no serious adverse events reported. Most patients reported tenderness and pain at the infection after the first dose, with some patients also reporting headaches, fatigue, or muscle aches. Only one participant in the trial experienced a mild fever after a second dose. The company said earlier media reports and analysts cited 8 possible hospitalizations related to the study, but the company said no patients were hospitalized. Shares of the company were down as much as 32% in after hours trading before the later recovering and rising more than 7%. So this is all financial information. So I don't know, man. These sort of trial runs that they're running, they seem, no one, at least to our knowledge, no one has died as of yet from one of these early phase 1, phase 2 trials. Dr. Phoenix, you have anything you want to add to this? All right, he's away.
No, not really. It pretty much kind of highlights what I had said earlier about the fact that, you know, the effectiveness of a COVID-19 vaccine is really going to hinge on its ability to provide immunity. I mean, well, the time frame in which it provides immunity for. I mean, that's the $1 million question. Like, how long will these vaccines provide immunity for, given that, you know, studies have shown that immunity drops off relatively quickly in folks who have recovered, who developed the antibodies and recovered from COVID-19. We're talking in a few months time frame from recovery. So I mean, that's the question, is how long will it, how many vaccines will people have to get in a given period of time? That's the question.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to the last item on the docket. This is from CGTN America. Dr. Benjamin discusses latest U.S. pandemic developments. As a brother.
Is the executive director of the American Public Health Association, that is an advocacy group here in Washington. Doctor, thanks so much for joining us. We just had this report about Isaias making its way up the East Coast, including some of these COVID-19 hotspots. How do you think this storm might impact efforts to contain the virus?
Well, you know, it's already resulted in the challenge of having to shut down their testing sites, which means that when they reopen in a few days, I'll be behind the curve in identifying who's infected and doing the contact tracing. So that's going to be a big problem. The second place, of course, is people that have to evacuate and go to shelters. Traditional shelters are not good because they're big conjugate settings for physical distancing, wearing a mask, or washing your hands. So that's the second big challenge they're going to have.
And Doctor, there was a recent study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association saying that children in particular, or younger than 5, may harbor up to 100 times as much of the virus than an adult. It's quite disturbing. How might this factor into this debate among U.S. school districts about whether they should offer in-person learning as opposed to online?
Yeah, you know, we're 30 days from going back to school. You know, the schools are really being challenged. And as we know, we're beginning to know more about kids. We don't know what having that virus in their bodies means. It does not necessarily mean they're more infectious, but people are concerned about that. You know, the big challenge here is, you know, how do you go back to school safely? And we really haven't quite figured that out yet here in the United States.
Let's talk about big picture, Doctor. A report by Johns Hopkins University says, I quote, "Unlike many countries in the world, the United States is not currently on course to get control of this epidemic. It is time to reset." What will be needed in that reset? Will it need to be something dramatic, like a national shutdown?
You know, we're going to have to increase the shutdown in many places. It may not be a national shutdown, but we're certainly going to have to come really kind of close to that. And the second thing we're going to have to do is rapidly ramp up our contact tracing and testing. Until we get adequate testing and contact tracing, even if we shut down, when we reopen again, we're going to be in the same place we were before.
And we're already into August, Doctor. Fall is just around the corner. And as you know, many experts are predicting this virus could surge even more. What do you think we can expect a few months from now?
I think the biggest challenge that we're going to have is that, of course, we're going to have influenza, which comes every year, and COVID. What I'm encouraging people to do, of course, is to rapidly build up our capacity to give flu shots so that we can sort that out from COVID cases. Also, we have a lot of kids in particular who have not had their childhood immunizations because they've been staying at home and not going to the doctor's office. I'm very much worried about COVID, but I'm also worried about things like measles, chickenpox, mumps. So we're going to have a massive effort to vaccinate folks, not just for influenza, but also the routine childhood immunizations. And we're also going to have to, once we get the once we get the COVID vaccine, prop our system so we can adequately give everyone that vaccine, even though that will not probably be until early next year.
And what is your final message for our viewers out there? What do you hope to impart on them?
Look, the prevention efforts work. Prevention works. Wear your mask, wash your hands, keep your distance. That's the best message I can give to anyone right now.
All right, Dr. George Benjamin with the American Public Health Association.
And there it is. The best advice coming from Dr. Benjamin: wear your mask, wash your hands, keep your distance. You have people come here and say, I don't have to go and wear no stinking mask when I go into a store. I just do whatever I want to do. Okay. Dr. Phoenix, anything you want to add to this based on what?
I've been saying the same as well from the very beginning. Wash your hands, minimum 20 seconds. Practice distancing. But, you know, I think it's ironic because I think if any healthcare provider out here is being truly honest about the situation, and this gentleman stopped short of saying it, is that you really do need a national shutdown. That's the only thing that that's gonna remedy this problem right here. You need a national shutdown in conjunction with a national plan of testing.
That's right. That's right.
There's just no getting around the fact that the reason you're seeing this surge in cases, and it's not just this is not just a fluke. This is evidenced by the fact that you're seeing increasing hospitalizations and rising deaths. These aren't just flukes here. And so you need a national testing plan so you can begin to identify the areas where you're having the highest number of cases, the specific populations that are having the highest number of cases, who is most at risk. And again, and then you start then you can do data more like looking at specifically, okay, which patients with which group of COVID-19 symptoms are more likely to die. And unfortunately, brother, this is, you know, we're in a country, man, where you know, people don't believe in science. Negroes go take some magical elixir, they're gonna get well. White folks are running around here pulling their hair out, talking about you infringing on my rights and don't tread on me. And you got Negroes acting like lemmings jumping right off the cliff with them. So I mean, I don't know, man. You know, again, you know, everything he said is true. I've been saying much of the same. I'm sure anybody that's in healthcare would tell you exactly the same as well. But he did stop short of saying, and I think this is kind of the 800-pound elephant in the room. This is what many folks, even Dr. Anthony Fauci, even he has, at least at the very least, he's hinted at we need another one, and it needs to be a real one this time.
Yeah.
And you know, again, his boss is, everyone knows who his boss is, and so he's not gonna quote speak against the agenda of his boss, because again, you know, this is just absolutely atrocious the way the U.S. has handled it. There's no institution out here that's doing the studies like Johns Hopkins or any other institution like it, that are looking at the numbers and clearly not saying the U.S. is operating like a goddamn failed country in this sense.
Hey, Dr. Phoenix, I'd like to ask you this: is it a doctor's responsibility ultimately to either go with the program here, or should he actually, go with the the best interest of the people, being that he's taken an oath, he's part of the fiducians and all of that. Is it his responsibility to go with the narrative, or is it his responsibility to go with the health, the health and the well-being of its citizens? Just a question.
His first responsibility is to do no harm. And that means your patient, or in this case, a population, comes first. Again, this is not about that. This has become such a issue of politicking, and this has been heavily politicized. You know, for any healthcare provider, doctor, nurse, or otherwise, I mean, your first responsibility is your patient. You do no harm to them. You do everything that's within your ability to maintain their health, to save them and maintain their health. And so ultimately, you know, the best way to maintain the health of a patient, in this case, the entire population of America, is by advocating for the fact, yeah, you do need this. And again, there needs to be more forceful rhetoric coming from these organizations, coming from nursing organizations, physician organizations, other healthcare providers, PA organizations, whatever. There needs to be very forceful rhetoric against it, but everyone seems so damn afraid to just say what needs to be said, which is that this country does need a real shutdown. I mean, it needs to be like China. It needs to be like what we saw happen in China. Literally, people locked up. You know, I sent you that video months back, Mike, where in Dubai, where you couldn't even leave the place, you couldn't even leave the house. You had to have cards. You had to have a key card, and they basically had to scan you. They had to scan it. And so this is what we're dealing with here, man. We're dealing with a situation where there has to be a real shutdown in this country. It's not going to be a little, some little tempered shutdown where you got one group of, a staggered shutdown where you got one state over here is completely shut down, the other state over here got somewhat of a shutdown, and this state over here got somewhere in between the other two. No, it has to be 100% shut this thing down, period.
It's exactly what needs to happen. I'm saying, shut this mother down, test everybody, and then we start to move from there. We should have done that in the first 90 days. We never did it. So, you know, the response has been horrible, and other countries have done much better. So
they should have been testing people at the airport. That was the first thing they should have done in December.
Yeah. Seeing who's who.
Absolutely.
They should. That's Homeland Security. That's Homeland Security. They should have been testing people as they came from an international flight. No way you're coming back into the country without being tested.
And it's funny you mentioned that this is Homeland Security, because as much as this is a health and a public health issue, this is also a national security issue.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And that's why we're in national emergency here. This is no game.
Yeah. And so this is just something, this COVID-19 is not just something that we're talking about in the sense of dealing with people's overall health and physiological needs. No, this is about dealing with the general, with the economics of this country, the economics of maintaining health and keeping a healthy population, but also just a national security issue. If you're busy trying to put out fires everywhere because of one pandemic, how the hell can you focus on all the other things? Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening every day. Every day you turn on the news, they're busy putting out fires here, busy putting out fires somewhere else. I mean, this is pretty shameful, man. How the management of COVID-19 has been in this country. I mean, it's pretty damn shameful. You know, it's kind of interesting if you know, I was watching some videos on I think it was Instagram and YouTube. You know, you literally got governments in other countries just laughing at America, calling Americans stupid. They don't believe in science. Like, how can you not trust the word of your experts, of your scientists?
This is terrible. This is terrible. I mean, we are a pariah. I call us now a we're not second world.
We're not third world. We're fourth world. And fourth world's a special fucking, classification. It's a very strong, powerful country that ain't shit when it comes to taking care of anybody and has this kind of response. It's a superpower that ain't shit. That's fourth world. I mean, this is some shit this is crazy. Vietnam, Singapore, and not that these are bad countries, but these are smaller, much smaller nations. They don't have nearly the wealth we have and so forth. And they have a far superior response to it. South Korea is the actual example to the world, and Germany and all this. Angela Merkel looks like a genius compared to this orange, stupid fuck. I mean, this shit is incredible. This is incredible. Man, we've never looked so bad. I'm embarrassed to call down to Brazil. Even as fucked up as Brazil is, I'm embarrassed to them to talk to my ex-fiance down there. I'm embarrassed. This don't look good. We look terrible. We look like fools. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I just think, like I said, I just think at the airports, Homeland Security should have been there. And I would argue that the Public Health Commission of every major city should have been at the airport, testing people, tracking people, contact tracing people. Where are you going? Where did you come from? Who did you come in contact with?
Mike, you're right. The hardcore reality we should have done like South Korea. First 10, 15, 20 people we saw with it, we should have shut the country down right then and there and gone right into testing and going right into quarantining. Boom, we wouldn't have had any of these problems.
Yeah, you got their passports. They came internationally. They scanned them in. Why didn't you test in? The amount of time that it takes to go through the airport, get your baggage and stuff, there was more than enough time to test every single person that came in internationally. I had to wait 45 minutes just for my bag through baggage. So and I only had one. So I'm looking at them, it's like, we're waiting a long time for these bags to come in. We could have got tested. And they could have loaded all this stuff into an iPad or something like that. They had all the the passport IDs and stuff like that. All they have to do is scan it in and say, oh, this person's been tested. We'll follow up with this person. They should have had, we have a public health police, for that matter, police department. Imagine that, public health police, with explorers and AR-15s in there. They had the ability to go to everyone's house and verify all this type of stuff. Where are you going? Where have you gone today? We want to see where you've gone. And they just did not do anything. So although we blame the president, states also should have taken responsibility on this. We have several police departments. You have Massport Police, you have Boston Police, you have Massachusetts State Police, you have the Public Health Commission Police, you have environmental police. There was all types of departments that agencies that could have looked into this. You have DHS, you have FBI. Where the hell was everybody not talking to each other? What is going on?
Mike, there was no coordinated response. You can't leave it on the states because we had governors out there like Sarah Palin, bird brains, people out here who've got the intellect of an amoeba. We
saw what happened in Texas and Florida with those, and Georgia with those three governors. It just didn't exist.
The mentation of these people are you can't count on that. That's why you have to have the response has to be federal. You have to have the president come down, make the right decisions, and then send out the edict to everybody else to follow. The president has to be able to make the proper decisions. That's why during emergencies in the United States, they give the president all of this tremendous power. He's for all practical purposes under a national emergency. Could be war or a disaster or disease or whatever. He's a de facto dictator. He has dictatorial powers. That's why they give it to him, because they know they can't have everybody running around making decisions, because at the end of the day, you can't have 101 chiefs on some shit like this. You got to have a proper leader who comes in, drops down the proper answer, and boom, then he goes right to his agencies and so on and so forth, and they carry this thing out, and the states follow, and boom, and here we go. And if anybody's going outside that or is eccentric to this, then they'll have to be dealt with, because at the end of the day, this is a national emergency. The president has power over the nation. The governor doesn't. The governor's only got power over his state, and he or she could be an immense asshole, an idiot, a bird brain, a fool. That we've seen. Some of these people are this way. So not every governor is going to be smart. It'd be nice to think so, but we know that's not the case. So, what you're talking about, Mike, is exactly what should have happened, but we didn't have any of this. None of this was coordinated, and the fish rots from the head down. So this guy's got a lot of blood in his hands, man. He had to get the proper response. This was the response of the century. So we're 20 years in. This is the biggest event going on, and he blew it.
No,
Yeah,
no,
man,
I agree with
go ahead.
I agree with what you said, Mike. I agree with what you said, but Nagone is also right. This has to be a coordinated federal response, and it has to come directly from the White House. And that this is the fundamental problem. I mean, there's only so much the states can do. And at the end of the day, when it came to testing, the testing strategy has to be a national strategy. Again, it even goes back to the issues that hospitals were having keeping adequate amounts of PPE. He was the only one that can invoke the War Powers Act, the Defense Production Act, excuse me.
Which is akin to like a War Powers Act, which is akin. Again, go ahead.
Yeah. And the president is the only one that can do that, and was the only one that was able to mobilize enough industries to get them to make enough PPE to fill in for the shortages that health systems were experiencing. And even now, it's still a problem. That there are still shortages in PPE, even though they're really not talking about it. There's still shortages, and so at the end of the day, this has to be a federal. This has to be a response that is coordinated through the federal government. That comes the marching orders come from the White House. There's just no getting around that, because unfortunately, we see what happens when these states were left to their own devices. We see the craziness that's coming out of Texas, what's coming out of Georgia and Florida. I mean, it's so bad in Florida now, man, that the positivity rates for testing in Florida was about a third. So 1 out of every 3 people that are being tested were positive. That is an insane number.
That's Governor DeSantis, a de facto moron, and this is what he did with his state. Some of these guys, damn it, should be jailed. But like I said, like you said there, Dr. Phoenix, it's got to come from a federal response. That was the name of the game. We never got that. We never had that.
Mm-hmm. Unbelievable, man. It's just a wonder for me, because I'm a tech guy, so I look at this and I'm like, okay, this is easy. Let's go in there and just knock this out. And then I see the response, and I'm like, are you serious? Like, we did nothing? All of this brain power that we have, and we did nothing? And I'm not even saying for the president. I'm just saying for the state itself. You knew that you had people coming in from China. You knew you had people coming in from Europe, international flights. And the response was to do nothing. Even if the president doesn't say anything, what were you guys doing all this time before as a contingency plan? And this started at Biogen, out of all places, which is a life sciences company. A stupid meetup. It started there.
Absolutely, brother. I mean, the first line of defense should have been isolation and quarantining of all individuals coming from international flights, specifically from China.
Mm-hmm.
That should have been the first line of defense, but no, that didn't happen. And there's no telling. I mean, again, even when they kind of did some tracing and did some backtracking of the disease of COVID-19 in New York. What did they find out? Oh yeah, their cases most likely came from fucking international travelers.
Yep.
And this is the problem. I mean, again, and I'm not saying that the federal response is everything, but this is one area where the states could have clamped down and could have certainly had a protracted response that at the very least could have probably slowed the infection rate. But again, we saw what happened in places like New York and Illinois, where it just spread like wildfire.
But on the flip side, we saw what happened in, let's say, Seoul, South Korea, that has as many people come. It's an international city as well, over 10 million people. We saw what happened there. As soon as they saw 4 people that they saw come down, but they were like, we dealt with this SARS before and we had a problem. We're not even gonna, we ain't even gonna let this percolate. We're not gonna let this percolate. We got these 4. We're gonna close the whole. We're gonna shut the whole Borgata down. We're gonna shut it down. And then what we're going to do is we're going to trace every single place these 4 people went. We're going to see what's going on, and then we're going to see where they were. And they found one lady was at some giant, church thing with 10,000 people there. They tested everyone there, and I've explained the whole thing about how they went about it. They showed you, man. We don't even have to guess. We know what the response is. We're just not doing it. We know the successful countries that have done it. Cambodia, Singapore, and these places did the same thing. Shut the joint down. Shut everybody down. Everyone got shut down. And they were like, well, we're going to test everyone. Now, these countries can get enough to test people, but yet we can't get, we're supposed to be one, of the richest countries on earth. And we can't buy enough tests. What? This is crazy. So none of it makes sense. None of this makes sense. You can't make sense out of it. Somebody here said in the chat, follow the money. That's where the answer is. Money and politics, but follow the money. Damn right. It's about them. These guys are trying to profiteer off of this bad boy while it was going down. Ill.
Well, just in how the Asian countries responded to it in general especially when you look at the Southeast Asian countries like Taiwan and Singapore, they are the model countries for how you get out in ahead of something like COVID-19 and how you clamp it down. Their response was instant, swift, it was coordinated, instant, and swift. You could not have done it any better. And as a result, you don't hear those crazy stories coming out of these countries like you're hearing coming out of the US.
Right.
You got 50,000 plus cases a day in this country. This is goddamn insanity.
You talking about 345, 400 deaths in all of South Korea? Yeah. Seoul, 10 million people? What does that tell you? Shows you competence, and then you come over here, you see gross, unbelievable, incredible, strange credulity that we have these amounts of deaths here. Makes no sense at all. Shows you the exact kind of system we're in. We're in a fucking air-conditioned fucking sewer. This place is it's a 4th world country. Super rich, dumb as fuck. Bullshit. This is crazy. You can't give any passing grade.
Mike.
Well, when you were, go right ahead.
No, just go ask you when you were traveling. You was kind of traveling sort of at the beginning of this of the pandemic. When you were in you went to South Africa? You went to, or was it Rwanda?
I went to both Rwanda and South Africa.
Okay, yeah. You was in Johannesburg. Yeah. Now, when you went there, and again, you're not really hearing all these crazy stories of COVID-19 coming out of Africa, neither coming out of African nations, neither. And just imagine these are countries that have less money, less resources than the U.S., but somehow they were smart enough to understand we have to get ahead of this. And you juxtapose that to your experience coming back to the country and how you were and just what you saw just immediately upon entry back into the country, right when this thing was kicking into overdrive.
Yeah, so we could not leave the plane until the South African Defense Force cleared you. There was somebody on the plane who was coughing, and I'm sure, I'm 100% sure this guy was infected. Okay, I think the pilots or the stewardess or something like that had already reported to the airport officials that, hey, there's a guy on here who's pretty sick, and they would not allow us to leave the plane for a good hour and a half. Okay, you're not getting off this plane. No one's getting off this plane. And you saw guys from the military board the plane in their hazmat suits, and they tested every single person before leaving the plane. You're not getting out of your seat. You're not getting your luggage. You're not getting anything. That's how in the United States it should have been handled. That's how it should have been handled. Instead, they allowed, oh, did you go to somewhere? Yeah, where'd you go? How was it? Okay, have a good day. And that was it. And in South Africa, no, you're not leaving the plane. When I got to Rwanda in February, it was voluntary at that time because COVID had not really exploded like it did in March. But in February, they kind of checked you. You weren't getting your visa until you answered the questions. Okay, in order to get the visa, you had to answer the questions first, and you weren't going to leave this section of the airport until you answered the questions first. And so that's how they handled it in Rwanda. And now I talk to people in Rwanda. They said the place has been on lockdown since March. No one's been able to leave. And you imagine Rwanda has about 11 million people that are used to just walking around. And they said the streets have been dead. So we haven't done the same thing that African countries have done in order to mitigate the spread. The problem with African countries is that the problem came from the outside. So Europeans were flying into the country and bringing the disease with them. It wasn't so much as the melanated people were traveling around and bringing it. It was actually the Mzungas bringing it into the country.
But the Africans had to deal with, so they know how to deal with some of this. They've had experience with this, so they know how to deal. We should know how to deal as well. But this is unbelievable. History is going to be very, very, very unkind to us.
When I was in Rwanda, they had an iPad. They had these iPads, and they grabbed your passport, they scanned it with their iPad with the camera on there, and logged you in, and basically ran an array of questions at you, interrogated you before you can get your visa. And if you had missed any of the questions, you weren't getting your visa because you can't enter the country without a visa. So that's how they were getting down out there. This was back in February. In the United States, we had completely opposite response. There were no iPads, there were no volunteers, there was nothing. Okay.
I mean, part of the problem, another major problem here is that, you have no real leadership at the national level in this country. And it's really pathetic when you have a president that undermines his own experts.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
You're getting on Twitter just to bash the National Allergy and Infectious Disease Director. You're getting on Twitter just to bash one of your other top doctors, but then you sit here and you praise some Nigerian doctor, some broad from Nigeria talking some crazy crap about some damn aliens and diseases. And she got
aliens and alien DNA. What was that? What was that, Glock? What was that, baby?
It would have been illegal.
What was that?
Look, the sad part is that.
Explain that one, man. Please explain that one,
man. I can't explain that because the sad part is that he is the president, and you're saying that, oh well, this is true. You see, these are experts, well, very respected doctors, and they're saying there's a cure, and they're saying hydroxychloroquine works. No, No. This is the fundamental problem. So then now you have the masses that take it, the white masses, they take it, and then of course Negroes go follow behind white folks. And they're gonna take it and say, look at this video, because I guarantee you there will be some Negroes out there talking like, see, there's a cure. We told y'all this was fake. And
they should have had a witch doctor up there with like a fire and a big kettle pot and running around, you know, doing incantations over, talking about, yeah, this is how we're gonna handle this right here. Yeah, that's what they should have just done that. Oh, what do you say, Mike?
You have a comment in the chat that says, riddle me this, the 2 funerals from George Floyd and John Lewis, did you see everybody wearing masks and social distancing? No, look into that. They are selling fair porn. No healthy person has died from COVID.
Who the hell said that?
Is what they call
Who said that?
Lou in the chat.
Anthony Lou. Anthony, you need to go to the Lou, dude. You bugging.
Hey, you know,
Anthony Lou came out the Lou.
They got land on Mars to tell you, man. Hey, let me know how that works out for you.
Just take a look at the deaths, man. Take a look at them, fam.
I mean, here's this is the part that really angers me the most, man. You know, if you look at some of the early numbers for COVID-19 deaths, here in Illinois, for example, the first deaths were Black people. This is the crazy. This is the absolute insanity among Black people, especially Black men. You know, I don't really get into the whole women stuff and what women say, but I find it very funny. You know, in this space, you got brothers that claim that they're erudite and educated, but they're the main ones peddling this conspiracy theory crap. But yet, nobody seems to no one seems to have, none of these folks seem to have any idea or can even tell you, okay, then what the hell is it? If it's this, then okay, then where the hell it come from? They go tell you oh yeah, some damn oh, it's the U.S. Army and their bioterrorism bank and Fort Meade and Fort Meade and Fort Detrick. No. Okay, I'm not about to.
Jay has his hand raised.
I'm not about to go there. I'm just gonna keep this very simple and just say, this is the kind of silliness among Black men that reason why brothers don't get taken serious. Because even in the face of things that are really happening right now, people are completely irrational.
I think you also have trolls coming in here. I think Mr. Lou is trolling. But but you do have the idiocy going on. Like you do have idiot talk like this going on. That's a fact.
Yeah, I don't want to. I know one of the other brothers that wanted to say something. So please.
Yeah, we'll give Jay the last word.
Oh, how's it going, guys?
What's going on, Jay?
John. Really impressed by, especially some of the Caribbean countries like Barbados, Trinidad, Jamaica, on their response to this thing. I mean, even the creativity. I know Jamaica even set up like a tourist corridor. So there's certain parts of the islands that tourists can go, and if they leave, like they get a call immediately, like they have to install on that. I was like, wow.
They had closed the borders with Europe from the very beginning, which is why when people were asking, well, how are the Caribbean countries, or that you don't hear any cases from there, because they already closed their borders.
Yep.
Even though it hurt them financially, they had closed the borders weeks ahead of time and figured that out where it was coming from. So the only problem is Jamaica and Barbados didn't close it with Britain, and that's where the cases came from.
Yeah.
Well, they did eventually, but not initially.
Yeah, initially they didn't, but Britain was the last border to be closed with the Caribbean.
First case was from Britain for Jamaica at least. And there
No, and that's absolutely correct. And in regards to Caribbean countries, I mean, these countries are kind of petri dishes, if you will, because all you need is one person to come on an island. In fact, these are small island nations, and so you only need one person to be infected, and now you got something that's completely out of control.
Three or
Not to
four
mention,
people. 3 or 4 people on that could finish.
not to mention a country like Jamaica, I think they only have 33 ventilators. So
That's exactly what.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, fam. Go ahead. Somebody just came through. I don't...
No, I think that was Jay just talking.
Oh no, I said it makes complete sense. I mean, when you take into account the fact that a country like Jamaica only has like 30 ventilators, I think. So you can't take any risks.
And these countries have small populations, 2 million and under. I mean, you're looking at small population. So.
Yeah, but if you make it to a ventilator, I think you should start writing your will at that point.
I believe so. I believe so. They're not even treating people with ventilators that much now. They feel that's like the last option.
I mean, ventilators are really terminal steps. If you're on a ventilator, it's pretty much terminal. It really truly is a last resort method. Most people that go on ventilators do not come off. That's just part of the thing. That's just part of it, which is why a lot of the treatments they've been trying to develop over the past few months have really been centered around really trying to push off putting people on ventilators until physicians absolutely have to. Because again, once someone goes on that ventilator, I mean, it just causes all kinds of problems. It's not just the COVID-19 you're dealing with. It's just a whole bunch of other issues that you start to deal with as well when you're dealing with ventilated patients. So it truly is a terminal and last ditch effort to save someone's life.
Is that something that was recently discovered? Because it seemed that at the beginning there was a mad dash for these things.
No, ventilators have always been in use. I mean, you use ventilators for a number of reasons. I mean, you use ventilators for people who undergo surgery, use ventilators for people who are sick with all kinds of issues. I mean, people who are terminally ill with cancer oftentimes are ventilated depending on what's going on with them. People who have end-stage COPD, they're oftentimes ventilated. I mean, it is for any number of reasons people can be put on a ventilator. I mean, people get put on ventilators if they're septic. So I mean, it depending on whatever's going on, that kind of dictates why they may experience respiratory failure. And so again, it just all depends. But the problem is with COVID is that patients were progressing pretty damn rapidly from looking and feeling normal to needing a ventilator. So literally you would see them one day and then you see them 2 days later, they need a ventilator.
All right.
That was the major problem.
All right, thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if not already done so, and share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. Thank you to everyone who participated in this and contributed on the panel.
Thank you, brother, for having me. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.